Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Discourse for today, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, 2023. I'm your host, Tristan, and I'm here. Look at this. I feel like I'm a little bit at a Dutch angle, but that's all good. Hello, chat. Hello, friends. Yeah. Should probably tell you guys all the things. My name is Tristan Johnson. I'm the host of the YouTube channel Step Back, which you're probably watching right now, which you can find at stepbackhistory.com. Or you can probably find my podcast, which is increasingly becoming the way that people seem to know where my content comes from, which is It's Probably Not Aliens, that I'm a co-host with, which is found at probsnotaliens.com. So that's a thing. It's a very fun podcast. We just recorded a really good one yesterday. And I stream on Fridays at noon, which is what I'm doing right now. Woo! Hello. My work can be supported by signing up for Nebula at nebula.tv/stepback, or you can go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory if you want to give a Patreon subscription. Both of them get videos early. Perfect, great stuff. If you have Amazon Prime, you can support my channel with one free Twitch Prime subscription per month. If you choose Step Back, very grateful, of course. And yeah, always welcome. And if you have anything like, if you want to do anything like Super Chats, bits, and Twitch subscriptions, again, welcome, appreciated. Of course, not necessary. But, hey, it's good for helping me pay the bills, you know? I just paid my taxes today, so, yeah. So when it comes to money, I don't have a lot of it right now. Because I'm in this sort of like awkward few days between when PayPal sends me my money from Patreon and I had to just drop taxes, because when you are self-employed and you are a business owner, you don't pay taxes regularly throughout the year. So once a year, you just have to pay all of your year's taxes, and I just did that, so it basically cleared out my bank account. Yeah. Let's see, what else can we talk about? Yeah, my latest video is on the anti-woke panic and the sort of terrifying history of the cultural Marxism conspiracy theory. My next video, which is very early in production, I really just started researching it this week, is on China. It is a primer to understanding recent Chinese history. So it's going to be trying to talk about China in a way that avoids either side of this new Cold War narrative, and basically gives Westerners what they should know about the country, minus all of the attempts to frame the narrative differently depending upon whether you're listening to American sources or Chinese sources. So hopefully that'll turn out well. I have a feeling that I hope it does well. I have a sneaking suspicion that it's not going to do great, but I really wanted to make it, and the patrons voted for it, so I think it's going to happen. And yeah, it's going to be very complicated, especially because there's a lot of incomplete information as well. But I'll try my best. And yeah, if you want to submit a question to the stream, you can go to the... Where's the thing? The link. This link here. stepbackhistory.com/stream question, and I will post a link in the chat. And there we go. Of course, the other thing I want to see is all the new faces. If this is your first time watching the stream, please make yourself known in the chat. We've got an amazing, supportive community of people who hang out during these streams and have amazing conversations, and I'm just here sort of entertaining the room. So if there's people who want to, like, you know, if you want to join on in, do so. Make yourself known. Say hello. And I'm going to keep this tradition going. I'm going to keep this tradition going that I started last week, and I think I'm going to keep going, which is everybody I want to hear your wins. Let's collect some W's, shall we? So one of the things I did last week that I think went really well, is a good way to get the stream off on a start, is for people to tell us about good things that happened to them this week, or wins that they had this week, no matter how big or how small. Just ways that things that happened this week that made it slightly better than it could have been. So please give me your W's. As for me, we celebrated my son getting through an entire week of daycare without getting sick, which is fun and not as common as you think. And also, he's also, as of yesterday, walking. Like he was able to, like, walk with some assistance, holding his hand or something like that, or able to like walk between us, like between me and my wife. But yesterday was the first time we caught him walking between things without any input from us. He just started doing it as part of his regular mobility stuff, and he repeated that action this morning. So very exciting stuff. Very happy to see the little guy basically doing the main thing of recovering from, or what's it called? Coming out of babyhood and entering into toddlerdom. What other wins do we have? Had a really good session of Pathfinder on Wednesday. That was really good. That had a pretty fun moment where there was these skeletons that were immune to that had a big heavy resistance to a lot of people's weapons. So they realized that if they headbutted them, they would actually take more damage. And so they just started soccer headbutting all these people, which I thought was really great. What else? And also, and I am GMing an RPG tonight, which is the Pathfinder game on Wednesday, and this game I'm doing tonight is the first times that I've been running an RPG in a month, and I'm so excited because I love that shit. Whew. There we go. I think that's my dubs this week. Let's see, what do we got? I hammered out the basics of the. I just drank a coffee, but I seem to be yawny for some reason. Pim Corman says, I hammered out the basics of factions for a strategy game you're working on. That's a decent W. Yeah, that is a decent W. I feel like I'm actually getting somewhere with this project. That's great. Yeah, all my game design projects never get on such a great start, but I am. That is awesome. That is awesome stuff, and I love world building. World building is so much fun. I'm working on this thing right now that it's not I don't even know what I would call it, but it's interesting. That I made one bit of progress on, and I haven't been able to make the next bit of progress on, but I can get to that at a different time. I don't want to take away from Pim's success at working out some factions, because as somebody who does a bunch of world building for my RPGs, shit's hard. I volunteered and got to meet some cool people. That's awesome, Sarvalal. That's so cool. Congratulations. AG says, I'm recovering from a drunk driver hitting us 2 months ago and was able to sit working for 3 hours yesterday before major back pain. That is, recovery from injuries can be a long and winding road, and those little victories of being able to do something without pain is amazing. It was 20 minutes right after the accident. Damn. Well done. That's great. It's great to see signs. As somebody who's trying to get in shape, it's great to see signs that your body is getting more capable of things. It's weird. It's weird to call this a W, but my grandma's service was today and it was quite moving. Yes, we heard about that on last Friday, Paul. And I'm glad that it went well. I'm glad that she got the service that she deserved. Yeah, time to lock everything up around the house to stop toddler mischief. We have already gotten our start on that. We have a particularly exploratory toddler, so We already have to have lots of like barricades and like, baby proofing things in place because he will get into everything. Today, after what's it called? Like after the morning when he was sent off to daycare, I had to clean up a bunch of cans of cat food because the cat's food. Actually, is he on camera? Here, I'll move the camera a little bit so you can see the cat. There we go. The cat's food was is like kept in a box, like it's all like cans, right? And my son seemed to have taken the interest in like walking up to, or went up to the box of cans and then just started pulling the cans out and dropping them on the floor. So there was just like cans of cat food all over the floor. That seems to be one of his new favorite things. And yeah. So yeah. I started to play around with gender-neutral Daniel says, started to play around with gender-neutral pronouns and reducing some internal cringe I've carried around for 40 years. Not sure how much I'll do outside of little parts of my life. Hey, whatever you want. I'm glad you're living your truth. I feel that I feel like world building is hard to make something that is not a generic fantasy thing. I think following visual themes instead of thinking about culture helped me a lot. Awesome. Yeah, I'm speaking of trying to get around like generic fantasy cultures, I don't know if you guys have seen this game that Paradox just came out with this week that I don't have the money to buy at the moment because aforementioned paying of taxes, but and it's like a $70 game, but it's a game where you basically can make your fantasy races and you can make them however you want. So you can make your order of like bloodthirsty cannibal elves, or you can make your like your noble orc paladins or whatever, or your like subterranean humans or whatever. There's like all sorts of different options, and I'm pretty excited to someday in the far future when I have money for it, actually buying the damn thing and giving it a shot. It's like somewhere. It's like a game that like, from what I can tell, it's like half. It's like a high fantasy version, a high fantasy game that's half Civilization and half XCOM, which I'm kind of interested in. But yeah, I do try to, when I do my own sort of fantasy world building, I try to avoid the typical things, or more often what I try to do is I try to take the typical thing, play it out to its like logical conclusion, and generate more interesting ideas or build on the things to make it make more sense and be more interesting. Like, let me see. What's a couple things that I can mention. I made up a race of dwarves that the whole thing about dwarves is that they basically experience religious ecstasy when they are in a flow state, like the sort of flow state of making things. And so their civilization doesn't see the value in any commodity that doesn't have active craft work put into it. And so their society doesn't believe in charging money for any raw materials. The only thing they believe that they can charge money for or any sort of premium for is things that have been crafted by hand. And they sort of are created by this like this god, their god to convert the universe's raw resources into beautiful works of art, and that's like their entire civilization is focused on that particular task, and that sort of is their main thing. Or I made orcs that were sort of based on steppes nomads, but not in like the sort of generic evil like Mongolian sense, but in like, actually like looking into their culture and understanding it. So like they live in yurts, they drink yogurt, they're like herders, and they also do a lot of work like protecting trade routes and stuff like that as part of their things, and that they tend to be these like scattered nomadic tribes and such. And I thought that was really fun. Or what was another thing I thought was fun? Elves. I always had it that the fact that elves live so long makes them like become super alienated and really don't like the idea of having. They don't really like having friends that are not elves after a certain point, because once you've like gone through 2 or 3 generations of all of your friends dying and you're still around, they kind of get cynical and jaded. And typically after a certain age, they start to retreat to elf-only societies, or they have to really, change their outlook on life. And so I thought that was interesting. Hopefully that gets things through. Let's see. Do we have any more dubs? It's called Age of Wonders 4, and I'm going to probably buy it in a few months when I have some money. I have a whole thing. I have a whole system. This is how you know I have ADHD, that I have to have a whole system for everything. I have a system for deciding whether to buy what I call treats, which are like, things I want to buy that are not like, the basics. And what I do is that every Friday I calculate how much money I've spent based on how much money I've made, so that if I made a positive amount of money, I can take the remainder and put a little bit of it away into a savings account. And if that money is a positive number, then I can buy a treat with it, which is basically something off of my treat list. And I have it so that I rank all the things I want to buy out of 1 to 3 joy. And then I have the price that it is, and the price is, and basically I try to buy the thing that is the lowest amount of money per joy that I can buy, and I buy that, and it comes, and that has worked really well at helping me, 1, save money, and 2, let me still buy things that are fun. And Age of Wonders 3 is on that list, but it being $70, I'm not like, it's not high on the list, because I think the next treat I'm going to buy is like, I think it's the Knave 2nd edition Kickstarter, because the Kickstarter ends June 1st or something like that. Anyways. I got a cross compiler for Epoch 32 running under Linux, and I got it to port some programs. I hope is that a good thing? That sounds like a good thing. My W is that I helped my partner get their ID fixed. Sweet. Great job. Is AOW good if you've played AOE? I've never played AOE, so I can't tell you. Should I get Victoria 3? It sounds wild. I mean, I have it, but I also was a nerd for that kind of stuff. You will need to, even more than I think other Paradox games, you're going to need to give it a lot of TLC to get it to be fun. It has probably the steepest learning curve of any of the modern Paradox titles. So if that's a thing that you're okay with, then if you are like me and like the kinds of games that require that you read the wiki and watch several videos before you can even understand what the hell's going on, then sure, Victoria 3 is for you. It got a rough start, but there's been a few patches that I think have improved it somewhat. That's a great system. Thank you, Cody. I also have the same thing for snacks, because I'm trying to eat better, so I'm allowed to indulge in 1 snack per day, and you do the same thing that I did with that, except it's with calories, and so that way I'm looking at it from a place of, ooh, I get to eat this today, rather than like, oh, I can't have anything, that kind of thing, which I feel like really changed the motivations on things. Okay. Just a little ADHD hack there. Yeah, let me look at my treats list. It's backing Knave 2nd edition. That one is high on my list. Because on the top of my list are ones that have due dates, like Kickstarters and stuff. Then it's a communist, a sickle and hammer insignia enamel pin from this. Like, I found this website that sells like leftist Star Trek stuff. And I want to buy like everything on the site. And I'm going to buy this, the best one that was like the cheapest was like this insignia pin that looks like, like a Starfleet insignia pin that's got, a sickle and hammer on it. And also a t-shirt that says friend of Dax, and it's got a picture of Jadzia Dax, but it's got like the trans pride flag behind it, which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah. The next video game on the list, though, is Foxhole. Has anyone heard good things? I've heard good things about this Foxhole game. I'm excited to give that a shot sometime. Which is like a massive multiplayer, like kind of like action RPG, but like it's like isometric top down, and it's like a World War II level of technology war where like you have to do with the players all the logistics and shit, which is very interesting. I've been told it's very good, and also that there's like a medieval version that they're working on now that I'm also very curious about. But you're digging AOW 4, and I've disliked most 4X games I've ever played. You know what, Kyle? Like, I get that. And this will be very spicy for someone like me to say, but I've never really been a big fan of Civilization. The Civilization series. I had like one really good time with Civ 5, but never really got into it either, because I think that what makes the Civilization games not click for me is that I can't grok the story, you know? Like, to me, Civilization feels like you're playing a board game, because the different civilizations are all from vastly different periods of history. They, it's completely ahistorical. And so, like, I don't see the sort of, I don't really see the 4X, I don't really see Civilization, like, Civilization doesn't engage me, the narrative of any particular game. But I fucking love Stellaris, because Stellaris is, it's science fiction, so it doesn't have that like tie to reality, and it has more of a focus on emergent storytelling, which I like a lot more. And then I'm probably going to get. This Age of Wonders game seems to fit in the same thing, where you can kind of tell different types of cool epic fantasy stories. Not looking for drama, but what's up with a few leftists bemoaning the end of Tucker Carlson's show as a platform for anti-war foreign policy takes? I haven't heard anybody say that. Who's saying that? Another thing I'm excited to buy is Codenames Duet, because I have a bunch of board games, but surprisingly, very few board games are actually 2-player, and most board games at time I only get to play is 2-player. And Codenames Duet is a 2-player version of Codenames that I'm pretty excited to get. And a lung expander. I've been told that's pretty cool too. Those are pretty cool. Which is like a sort of... it's like a device that you breathe into that gives you resistance, and it's supposed to strengthen like your diaphragm and your like the muscles that control your lungs. And apparently it helps you sleep better and is good for cardiovascular training, so I'm going to get that too. And a bird feeder. I really want a bird feeder. All right. I hope that I feel like let's take a look at our questions, shall we? Just want to see if we have any new questions. Doesn't look like it. Okay. The other thing too is it's hard for me to play any of these games because one of those bird feeders that take pictures. No. I want to get. I have like a window right there. Like right over there is like a window that overlooks my backyard, and I want to put a. You can get these bird feeders that like attach to your window, and they're like made of see-through plastic. So I could like look over there and watch birds eat out of the bird feeder, because I'm on the second floor, so it's less likely that squirrels will get to it, and I can watch the birds eat from the bird feeder while I'm working. So that'll be excited for. So the treats thing is a motivation to not pay money for things. That's my trick. Because otherwise I end up buying a bunch of stuff and going into debt, which I'm trying to not be in. So, all right, let's do some questions. We don't have a ton of questions today. That's why I'm sort of stalling, but let's do the ones that we got. I do have a hummingbird feeder. I do have those. I don't know if I live in a range for hummingbirds. I think maybe I do. Do I live in hummingbird range? Oh, looks like I kind of do. Yes, in the summertime. For a brief period in the summer, there are hummingbirds in my area of the country. Have I thought about gardening? Yeah. We tried the first year that we moved into the house, we tried gardening, and we had not such great luck because of two factors. One, we live in a neighborhood that has a lot of black walnut trees, and black walnut trees are poisonous. Like they poison what's it called? They poison the soil that they grow in. And there are plants that are resistant to it, but it's only like a handful of native species. And so to grow anything in these places, I would basically need to get raised beds. And raised beds are a pain in the ass to get or make. So basically we would need to, that growing season, that plus, we have a ton of squirrels, and the squirrels destroyed everything we tried to grow. So that year was basically a write-off. I think we ended up getting like one vegetable out of the entire garden that year. But, then the next year we had a baby, which really took all of our free time, or if we did have any free time, we were completely exhausted and had no chance of actually doing any of that. And then this year we have a toddler, and sort of the growing season sort of snuck up on us without us realizing it. But it might still be early enough that we can get a raised bed and grow something, but we have to get a raised bed, and I don't have a car. Next year I might have a car, which will make it a lot easier to get raised beds. So, because right now we have like issues where we don't have a car, and so which works like most of the time, but sometimes for things like buying wood or like propane for the barbecue, or firewood, because we have like a little fire pit out there. And chicken wire, yeah. So the plan is to buy some raised beds, get some chicken wire, and grow some vegetables in there. I really want to grow some pumpkins. That's like what I really want to grow is a Three Sisters plot. That's like the thing I'm really trying to do. So like I want to get some raised beds and grow like a mix of like pumpkin, some kind of beans, and a corn stalk, and sort of because that's like the form of agriculture that was prevalent in the indigenous people who lived in this region. And I kind of want to build some Three Sisters plots because, one, they're very low maintenance, and two, I think it's really cool to have like, for anyone who doesn't know what a Three Sisters plot is, the indigenous people of the region would grow three plants called the Three Sisters that would sort of mutually reinforce each other. They would grow corn, because corn will be this like single stalk that will act as sort of like the stick that things can grow up around. And then you plant a sort of bean that can use the stalk of the corn to grow around. And also it renitronates the soil, so the corn won't deplete the soil like corn does. And then you have squash. You grow a type of squash at the bottom, which it has big leaves, and the leaves cover the sun so that no weeds grow around the plants. And furthermore, it's It's really cool, and I really want to do that. You can always rent a pickup for a day. The problem is that I don't have a driver's license. I'm getting one now, and I have a friend who is moving to Australia at the end of the summer, and he's giving me his car. So I will have a car. I will be able to do all of this next year. You're going to plant sugarcane? That's pretty cool. It's far too cold to get it to grow sugarcane here, but that's cool. What's it like to get a driver's license in Canada? It varies a lot province to province. In my province, at age 16, you can write a what's called you write a test, like a paper test, and they give you a G1 license, like a sort of like level 1 license. And at level 1, you can drive a car with a fully licensed person also in the car, and you can only really drive during the day, and you can't go on highways. Then after a year or 8 months, if you 8 months if you go to driver's school, 1 year if you don't, you then take an in-car test to upgrade to the G2. Which is like having a full license, except you can't go on highways and you can't, like, you don't have your alcohol tolerance. Like, you can't even, like, you have to have 0 blood alcohol when you're driving. Then a year after that, you take another test and you get your full G license, which lets you drive on highways and gives you, like, you know, your ability to drink a beer at dinner and stuff like that. Don't sell your soul to the devil automobile. You know what? I don't plan on using it all the time is the thing. Like, I'm going to get a car, and I think that I think that that's going to be fine. I don't plan on, like, using it to go everywhere, but I would love to. The things that I'm excited to get a car for is, one, grocery shopping, which is a huge pain in the ass where I live. 2, the ability to travel, like do road trips and stuff like that, and take my kid to see a bunch of stuff, go camping, that kind of stuff. And, you know, drive to my parents' place and stuff. And 3, I want to get a gym membership so that I can, instead of just doing a little bit of a workout every day, I can, like, go a couple times a week to the gym for like an hour and do like a real workout. But that's just, I can get by without a car for a lot of things, but there's a lot of times where, like, you can get by without a car, but either you are going to be annoying your friends who do have cars because you have to borrow a ride. Like, say, if, what's it called? Like, if I need to buy propane for our barbecue, like, I don't think they're going to let me take a full tank of propane on the bus. That seems like a health hazard. And doing things like buying wood to build something or something like that. And also things like what's it called? I'm a regular blood donor, and the place where Blood Services Canada is sort of outside of the downtown core, and I could go there via bus. But it's one of those things where I would need to take a bus into downtown and then back out, and the whole process would take like an hour and a half. So there and back would be like a 3-hour bus ride. But I could just take a taxi, and at the moment I take a taxi, and the whole process costs like $40. If I had my own car, that would not be a problem. How's public transit in my area? Is it just bus, or do we have rail transit? In my area, we just have buses. We do have rail in the sense of we have Via Rail, but Via Rail is very expensive. But we don't have like a metro or anything like that. Gym memberships are a pretty inexpensive source of well-being. Yeah, I agree. And furthermore, I live in the city that, in the city I live in, there's a university that I'm an alumni of. And so I can get an alumni card, and the alumni card lets me get like a pretty cheap gym membership at the university's gym, which is fine. It just means that I have to, like, the campus is far enough away that it would be it could be either like a really long bus ride every single time I want to go to the gym, or it could be a quick drive. Mm-hmm. Trolley bus or like trams. I get it. It's just I don't even know what the differences are, but like just a regular bus. They just have like regular buses. It's not like cable cars or anything like that. But I do miss Toronto, where I did not have to deal with that shit. But yeah, it'll be fun. I feel like I've never owned a car ever, and I've never had a full license. The closest I ever got is I had a G1 when I was like a teenager. But when I get the license, I think I'll be pretty excited to be able to do stuff like the concept of like road trips and stuff like that is very exciting, and the concept of being able to go camping with my son, which I got to do a lot as a kid, I'm pretty excited for. And just like a lot of things that are normally really annoying being a lot easier. But still, I'm not going to I don't want to become the kind of person who like drives everywhere. You know what I mean? All I know about that part of the world, so I've seen Not Just Bikes. Half is true. Living without a car must be hell. Yeah, I actually live in the same city that Not Just Bikes grew up in. So yeah. Do I go to the States often? Yeah. Yeah, my wife is an American expat. So my in-laws live in America, and so we at least go there every year for the holidays. And I also like to go to VidCon, which I'm doing this year, which is in LA. So I'm doing that. And where else am I? I'm also going to a friend's wedding this year in August, which is in Virginia. So I'll be going to the US for that. And there's another thing, too, that is a bit of a secret, but it's going to be in Michigan in November, so I'm going to go to that, too. It's a lot of stuff. It's like the first year that I've like let myself travel because of COVID. Like, the first year that like COVID has been less of a thought that I can feel safe actually traveling places, and it's going to be very annoying. Secret Michigan visits? Yes. Let's just say, Twitchy Bite, that there is, in November, in Kalamazoo, going to be a Ancient Aliens live show that some podcasters might be attending in the audience of to make content. So... How many of the 50 states have I been to? I want to say 48. I've been to most of the states. No, 47? There's only a few states I have not been to. The only states that I've never been to are... I actually think there's like 4. There's like 4 states I've never been to. I've never been to the upper Pacific Northwest states. So I've never been to Oregon or Washington. I've also never been to Wisconsin. And I've never been to Arkansas. But I've been to all the other ones. At least once. Oh, right. Yeah. I also I haven't been to Alaska or Hawaii. Yeah. I haven't been to either of the non-lower 48 states. I forgot about that. Yeah, I've never been to Alaska or Hawaii. Have I been to BC? Yes, I have some family in BC. I haven't been since I was like 11 years old, but I have been to BC. All right. If we ever develop some form, so I got the first question here from Doot the Skeleton. If we ever develop some form of fast and light travel, do you think we should adopt something like the Prime Directive? Yeah, to an extent. I think that at least civilizations that haven't developed like high levels of technology should be given some special consideration, given that every time a technologically advanced civilization has met one that is in a previous sort of different form of technological advancement, it has never ended well, and that is that is a big deal. And so I do think that there's a lot, like, obviously there's limits for humanitarian reasons, but there are still, like, it's hard to do, Is it truly as beautiful as their license plates make it out to be? Oh yeah, BC is gorgeous. As someone who lives in Washington, BC might as well be Washington. Well, there you go. I do know that one of the most interesting things about the data that I got for It's Probably Not Aliens is that we have a disproportionately large listener base in Seattle. And so if Step Back was ever going to do, or sorry, if It's Probably Not Aliens was ever going to have like a live show, I'd probably want to put it, I probably want, like, the first place I'd want to have it in is in Seattle. Just because Seattle, like it's actually like wild, like it's how big our like Seattle is the number one city that we get downloads for It's Probably Not Aliens from, and the like 2 and 3 are like New York and LA, which don't count because they're just like massive cities, right? Seattle, Tacoma, and yeah. It's not just a US-based VPN. Yeah, that might be. Okay. I know you're not okay. So next question we got here is, I know you're not especially optimistic about this happening, but what do you think the GOP will do if they lose in 2024? If that happens, it'll mean Trumpism will hurt them in every election for almost a decade. But I kind of feel like the party's incapable of changing course at this point. I actually am not pessimistic on this front anymore. I was talking about this recently, and there's like, the thing is that the Dobbs decision combined with, so I don't know if this might sound like because we live in sort of like a media like echo chamber, this might not sound like it's true, but it is true. And that is, in 2022, the midterm election in 2022, the Republicans tried to double down on trying to build an anti-trans, anti-LGBT culture war by like having this weird obsession over trans people. A segment, by the way, that is like less than 2% of the population, if not even lower. It's like an absurdly low number of people. And apparently that insistence on obsessing over gender hurt the Republicans in the polls. And furthermore, it looks like that the sort of outpouring, or the sort of the knock-on effect of the Dobbs decision, the end of Roe v. Wade, has resulted in a lot of the sort of Obama-Trump states that gave the Republicans their surprise victory in 2016 is gone. Like a lot of those states that used to be that voted for Trump in 2016 are flipping back into a Democratic direction. And furthermore, there's more and more public polling that shows that the vast majority of people do not give a shit about the attempt to create like an outrage against the existence of trans people. Most people think that it's like there's a Fox News poll that showed a majority of people who would fill out a Fox News poll don't think that gender stuff is a major issue in American politics. They care about the economy. They care about a bunch of other things. And so it looks like the Republicans are stuck in the situation where their base is getting more and more insane. And in order to keep that group happy, they're alienating themselves with the vast majority of people who don't really see why the Republicans are so obsessed with, shitting on all of these random people who, even if people don't have the most enlightened philosophy on trans people, they don't understand this like obsessive attack on trans people. And so it does seem like it is hurting to the point where apparently the Republicans are saying that that Trump is probably going to win the nomination, because it does seem like Ron DeSantis isn't doing as well as they thought he would. That Trump is probably going to win the nomination, and the fact that he is currently like on trial for a bunch of crimes, and the fact that he lost the last election, and the sort of like way that a lot of the Republican base is going, basically like there's a lot of Republicans out there who have basically already written off the 2024 election, and they basically are like, oh yeah, okay, Biden's just going to get reelected. Like at this point, it's very unlikely that it's very unlikely that the Republicans are going to field a person who is going to beat Biden in 2024, which is good. That's good news. Obviously, like I said, this doesn't mean that people have largely changed their tune on trans people. It's just that most people don't care or don't think that the existence of trans people is a big issue. And see it as sort of weird how obsessed reactionaries have gotten to people just existing. And so it's more that they're like their hostility towards trans people has more like alienated them from a lot of people. And that's good. And we'll see what happens in, because I don't know what, because like the thing is, if you want to think about pre-Trump, the Republicans knew after 2012 that like, because what happened was if you guys want like, let me see if I got enough time for this. I mean, I do have a lot of time because I'm just blabbering and it's my stream, so I own it. I can do whatever I want. But basically, let's do a little bit of recent American political history, because I know some of you are fairly young and probably weren't paying attention to American politics at this time. So let's like give like the full lowdown. In 2008, the Republicans fielded a vice presidential candidate by the name of Sarah Palin. And Sarah Palin was very Trump-like in a lot of the things that she said. And it resulted in the Republicans taking a massive L. With John McCain and Sarah Palin lost terribly to Barack Obama. And then in 2012, they tried to use Tea Party energy, and they fielded another like kind of like Tea Party guy as the vice presidential candidate for Mitt Romney. And that also failed terribly. And there's a document that they made after the 2012 election, their sort of 2012 election Republican postmortem, where they came to the conclusion that that there is a fundamental demographic issue with the Republican Party, which is that it relies too much on a demographic of people that is basically aging out. They're getting old. They're white in a country that is becoming increasingly less white, and if the Republican Party is to have a future, they're going to need to break out of this single demographic appeal. And the thought that they went to, and this isn't a bad idea, this is actually strategically probably pretty smart, is that they realized that one of the largest growing segments of the American population is Latino people. Latinos are now the largest minority racial group in America, and they are the fastest growing and, on average, the youngest racial group in America. Which means that they have a future. There's probably going to be more of them. And furthermore, because of the high prevalence of Catholicism in Latino communities, there's a lot of cultural conservative values in a lot of Latino communities. So they thought, rightfully so, that the future for the Republican Party would probably be to ease off a lot of their isolationist immigration, like racism stuff, and embrace more things, more issues that they can make a reach out to the Latino community and build a new coalition to win in. This basically culminated in 2016 with Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush, he speaks a little bit of Spanish. He has a Mexican wife, and they thought that he would make a great candidate for trying to field, the center of a conservative American base, and also have a decent appeal to conservative Latinos that then could be like a new winning Republican coalition by shoring up some states like New Mexico or Arizona or something like that. And also to stem the tide of the purpling of Texas. And that Trump basically destroyed that. Trump ran against that idea and won, showing that the core base that you need to win the Republican primaries basically will not let you run a campaign like that. So they have completely alienated themselves to the Latino community in America. Latinos, much like the black community in America, are, with the exception of Cubans, do not vote Republican at all. And they probably won't for a very long time now because of the Trump effect. So Trump might have been able to strike out one election in which the Democrats were particularly weak because they ran a uniquely bad candidate in 2016. But it seems like the long-term effects of Trump's effect on the Republican Party is going to make the Republican Party become more and more alienated from its own base. And unless they can do a major change in their policies, like they don't have a future. And I think they know this. And I don't know exactly what their plan is because Trump has brought so many new people into the party, now that we're we're getting into our fourth election since Trump's election. There's now so many hardcore Trump Republicans in the party that the party is basically unable to moderate itself and sort of get back in control and do something that's more strategic. And so now they're trying to double down on anti-democratic measures, gerrymandering, that kind of stuff. But that's also not working super great. People are becoming more aware of the issues of gerrymandering, and yeah. And so the Republicans are just not in a good place right now. And 2022 was supposed to be their way of turning it around using this anti-trans panic, and it didn't work. And I think that we don't really appreciate how bad it was. 2022 was the worst that the opposition party has performed in a midterm election in over 100 years. It was a fucking disaster. And that is not really appreciated too much in what's going on in American politics right now. The only thing that might hurt them is the fact that the Democratic Party also has soured their relationship with a lot of the Latino community because during the primaries, the Latino community was overwhelmingly in favor of Bernie Sanders, and I think it was pretty transparent how the Democratic Party dicked him over hard. And so I think there's still a lot of mistrust and animosity towards the Democrats because of that, but not enough to overcome the overt racism of the Republican Party. So Yeah. Whew. Hopefully that was a bit of a spiel. But like, yeah, like things like the Dobbs decision, like an extremely unpopular Supreme Court decision, and also basically killed abortion as an issue for Republicans to run on, which apparently gave them a lot of their voting energy. And now that like abortion is illegal in like pretty much every Republican state, there's now, and which is something that is very unpopular with the people of those states, by the way, overwhelmingly across the country, abortion is supported by the majority of the population. But now that that is over, now that that is like not a thing they can campaign on, there's also not a lot for them to use as their rallying call, especially with evangelical Christians. So yeah, it's tough all around. It's real tough all around. The Republicans need a new winning coalition to win the presidency, and they really just don't have it at the moment, because they would need to reach out to new communities, and they've pretty much burned their relationship with every major demographic in America. They might be able to eke out some House and Senate victories using like, anti-democratic means, but it's their time is limited, because their main demographic that they have basically now that they're like lashed around like a freaking weight around their neck is dying off, and they don't really have a next option. They thought maybe that they could like create a right-wing resurgence with the sort of alt-right and the sort of the Trumpist, like, the neo-Nazi sort of stuff, but that didn't work out either, because it turns out people don't like racism. Was I surprised that even the liberal Supreme Court justices said they don't need a code of ethics? No, I feel like most powerful people don't like anything that involves a check on their own power. I'd argue that Bush's 8 years in office damned any Republican's chance for 2008. That's true. Yeah. Bush basically did really, Bush did really sour any Republican's chance. And also the recession, the stock market collapse in September of 2008 also really hurt the Republicans. Was the Tea Party a short-lived hardcore Republican during the Obama era? Yeah. The Tea Party was sort of like this almost proto-Trumpy type movement that existed and they were hugely influential in the 2010 midterm elections. And they still have like some of their like leaders and ideologues. For the most part, the Tea Party just got absorbed into the Republican Party, and now a lot of Tea Party Republicans are just like leaders in the party. Like probably the most visible Tea Party Republican, like person who got elected in the 2010 Tea Party wave, and is still like a leader and still like probably is a big mover and shaker in the party, is Ted Cruz. And, no matter what you have to say about Ted Cruz, he is still a prominent Republican and a well-known leader in the party, even though everybody fucking hates him. The worst since 2002. Yeah, the post 9/11 midterms are usually considered a weird anomaly because of 9/11. Your channel just popped up in my algorithm. Glad it did. Hey, two travelers. Well, it's a joy to have you to join in. We were just talking about the sort of rough seas and prospects for the future of the Republican Party. Maybe the Republicans have a shot if they push for a more general political apathy. Kind of. Like, voter suppression is actually, like, basically the only card they have left to eke out some victories. Voter suppression and gerrymandering is basically all they have left in some states, and they know that if those ever go away, that's the end of it for them. They don't really have much after that. I know his fellow senators hate him, but I wonder if other Republican Party leaders like him. I mean, he's liked enough that he keeps getting reelected, and he has, like, you know, a staff of people who work for him, and you know, he is like in 2016 he was one of the main contenders for the presidential candidates. So I think that it'll be my guess is that the 2024 election is, like, we're so far out and so many things can happen, but I'm under the impression that the 2024 election is going to be pretty bad for the Republicans. And if that is the case, I don't know what they do after that, because they need a new winning coalition, and they just don't have one. And it's going to be tough for them to make new allies, because everyone's feelings about the Republicans are now very strong, you know? They've polarized society in order to, or they tried to polarize society when Trump was in charge by making the party more extreme. But what they didn't realize is that actually alienated a lot more people than it brought on board. And the Democrats, while not really doing much at all, have just sort of sat back and sopped up, you know, slurped up all of the people who are just mad at the Republicans. And all the Democrats really need to do is not grotesquely piss off too many people, and they'll get elected. That's sort of where things are. Ted Cruz has a bisexual daughter. Oh, that's interesting. I guess, did those two little girls, I guess they grew up at some point, aren't they? I guess in my mind they're still like 6 years old, but that was also like, you know, that was also 6 years ago, so I imagine that they're older now. While we're on this campaign tag, maybe if Biden dies during the campaign, Kamala Harris would definitely have a harder time winning the vote, just because nobody likes her. But if it's against Trump, I still think that, I don't know. I feel like Americans have, it seems like Trump he appeals to a very specific base, but he is definitely not going to be the powerhouse that he was. And I think Trump has enough power in the Republican Party to win the nomination, but he doesn't have enough power to win the general election. I don't think. But of course, that's just where we're at now. And I think that also, like, the Democrats know that Kamala Harris isn't popular. That's why she's not running for president right now. And I think that if Biden were to, like, suddenly die, or what's more likely, people rarely just suddenly drop dead. But if it became apparent that he's, like, severely ill, and he's probably going to and he's not going to, like, live very long, they'll probably do something to change things around. I don't know what that would be, but people just dropping dead is a very dramatic thing, and that very rarely happens. And if it turned out that Biden was, you know, circling the drain, they'd probably do something. And if he's running for president in 2024, it's my guess that probably the Democrats are feeling pretty confident that he's at least in good enough health to get through another 4 years, or at least get through the 2024 election. But of course, you know, people can have heart attacks, people can have aneurysms, people can get cancer. So if Ted Cruz ran for president again, do you think the other GOP candidates would use the fact that he has a queer kid against him? Probably not. That's not really. I mean, maybe maybe Donald Trump would, but most Republicans, I think, would think that would not stoop to that. I don't think. How can Trump handle a campaign while dealing with his legal issues? Mostly because most of his legal issues are being dealt with by his lawyers, not him. So he wouldn't need to... do you do these Fridays mostly? Yes. Every Friday at noon I do this. Unless, like, something comes up. Due to Biden's old age, complications can happen fast. That is true. Like, it's not an impossible thing to happen, but I feel like if there was like an underlying medical problem, that they would be trying to figure something out right now. Like, Democrats are, they're stupid, but not stupid in that way. Although they are trying to say that it's sexist to not want somebody who like actively has dementia from staying in the Senate right now. So who knows? It's also worth noting that Biden has access to the best healthcare in the world. That is true too. Yeah. But you know, Biden's like what? He's going to be like 81 in 2024. Like, that's old, but he could. People do live to like 90, so it's not like it's impossible or completely unheard of. Good old Dianne Feinstein. Not can't believe that the Democrats try to pull like, oh, if a man had Alzheimer's and was unable to do his job, no one would call for their resignation. And I'm like, I would hope that in a just world they would. Grandmother was 93 when she died. Yeah, my great uncle died just a few months short of turning 100. It's not like it doesn't happen. But, you know, it's definitely like, he's definitely getting to the age where his health is more of a concern. But I don't think it's, but I think that there are things that, like, there are ways that his health would be considered a problem if, like he my imagining is that Joe Biden sees a doctor on a pretty regular basis. And if there was, like, you know, major concerns about his health for the next, like, 5 or 6 years, that they probably would have done something about that by now. But obviously that's not the case. That's way too big of like a Hail Mary to go through, right? Grandfather was 82, hope to get 80 at least. Yeah, 80 sounds nice. I feel like I'm either going to clock out in my 70s, or I'm going to, like, it really depends upon how the next few years of medical tech go. I'm either going to clock out in my 70s or I'm going to be like 120. I don't know which way it's going to go, but there's some wild shit that's sort of on the cusp of coming to the market that I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Either I'm gonna die in my 70s, or like what's it called? Or they're gonna find some way to 3D print new organs, and I'm gonna live forever, you know? Or, you know, a long time anyway. Do you think the U.S. will finally move away from bipartisanship? Not really. The way that America's political structure works, it's very hard for third parties to actually be viable. Typically what happens is every time there is a third party, they very often get subsumed into another political party after about one election cycle. Just because, like, minority governments and stuff like American politics don't really work with like the sort of the realities of like a parliamentary system where there's like more than two political parties. What could happen in the future is less that there's like a third party and more that one party collapses and a new party sort of takes over the spot of that. Like if the Republicans do not have the, if the Republicans don't have steam for a future, there could be a point where a new political party sort of replaces them in the political space. Either by Democrats taking their remaining demographics, or a new party with different demographics sort of taking over and changing the entire game. Organoids are a thing, but they're a long way off from organ replacement. Yeah, I don't think it's like I probably misspoke when I said replacement. I think there's like going to be a lot of like regenerative stuff. Like I think that the ability to repair organ functionality is getting very fancy, and also a lot of the things that cause age-related illness are also being dealt with in a pretty interesting way, like beta cell regeneration is becoming more of a thing, which like is most of the reason why like people's organs start to break down as they get older, is because of like, you know, they have issues with their insulin resistance and stuff. But like there's also way like many other things that you can kind of throw into that, like we've already made heart attacks way less deadly than they used to be. Like to the point where cancer is really the only thing that we haven't been able to really sink our teeth into, and even then there's like a whole new world of cancer treatment that is that's being worked on right now that could change things. I'm not saying that it's I'm not saying that it's definitely going to happen, but what I'm saying is that it could happen. And you know, there's a lot of very interesting things that are showing a lot of promise in fairly recent things. Like, and especially when it comes to geriatric medicine. There's what's it called? Is it like there's some very interesting developments in in using ultrasound to stimulate nerves in your body. What's it called? There is this one treatment that I did hear about that uses ultrasound to stimulate nerves in your organs in order to make certain types of like things happen. The one that I saw it in reference to was for diabetics, that it would this ultrasound treatment could reduce the people's use of insulin, especially on top of like another thing which is called duodenal mucosal resurfacing. They basically like scorch the inside of your duodenum with like an endoscopic type thing, and that apparently is also really good for your blood sugar. I don't know how that works, but that's apparently a thing. And yeah, like regenerative medicine that it works on like restoring like using I don't know if it's like stem cells, but being able to take sort of decayed cells and regenerate them into a like living state to repair organs, which is a thing that we didn't think we could do before. Even things like a lot of the things that caused like premature death, like obesity. Like I don't know if people have been following this, but like there's a new drug called, or not a new drug, it's been around for a little bit, but there's like a sort of class of drugs called, like, I think the brand names are like, they're called GLP inhibitors or something like that, or agonists or something like that. I don't know. I'm not very scientific, but they are, but the kind of names they go by in medical circles are like Ozempic and like Mounjaro and stuff like that. And right now, because they're under the sort of 10-year exclusion period, they're very expensive. But apparently they are causing like rapid weight loss, which could drastically change the obesity epidemic. When it goes, because I think that one of them goes generic in 2031, which like is a long time, and like a lot of people are going to die before 2031. But 2031 is not very long in the future, and when like a drug that causes like severe weight loss, that is like goes generic, that could be a huge game changer. In the 19th century, there was this weird situation where the entire Supreme Court was appointed by a party that no longer existed, and they were still making rulings that basically no one in the government supported. Is that going to be the situation again? It could be. That could be that could be like that, yeah. Hey, I somehow caught one of your streams. How's my favorite cis white male political content creator? Thanks for being an ally. Well, thank you, Fallout 2 Forever. I appreciate that. I'm doing great. It's Friday. It's Cinco de Mayo. I'm gonna have some Mexican food tonight. It's gonna be great. We're gonna make some margaritas. I have a toddler that just started walking, so this weekend is gonna be really fun because the weather's gonna be nice and he's gonna be running around, and it's just gonna be a really good weekend overall. So I think it's gonna be all right. And also just starting on the optimistic front. I feel like this stream in the last 2 weeks where we start with your W's has already created such a better vibe in the stream. Don't you guys agree? I like it. I think your dad's on that. He lost over 100 pounds. Yeah. It's magical. What's it called? Apparently Elon Musk lost a bunch of weight recently, and that's how he did it. Like, the problem is that it is like basically a miracle drug. It is absolutely insane how powerful and how well these like GLP agonists are. I've read some articles about people who are using them, and it's like fascinating. Like, they're like, for the first time, like I can like have like, 2 bites of something and feel fine, and it's like, whoa. Because it manipulates your hormones, the hormones that experience hunger, and that makes sense because people have different levels of different. We have a different cocktail of hormones in our body at any given time, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of obesity is tied to people's hormones being like the hormones that are about regulating food or appetite specifically. Being out of whack because, people probably developed different levels of those kinds of hormones depending upon what the richness of the food that they lived in the region they lived, right? And then all of a sudden we live in this like sort of capitalist food culture where everything is basically packed full of the nutrients that used to be very scarce. And all of a sudden, like, our hormones, which are pretty hard to control even at the best of times, don't know how to handle that, and we just end up like eating as much as we kind of feel satiated with, and in our current food culture that's way too many calories. So if you think about it, then something like a Mounjaro or an Ozempic would be a kind of corrective for that, which in lieu of just having better food overall is pretty magical. And like I said, 2031 is when the first one of those Ozempic becomes like generic, and when things become generic, they become very cheap, or a lot cheaper anyway, and so that could be a huge deal. Found kind of hilarious in the dark way. Russia threatened nukes again, but now they've done that so many times that some outlets didn't even cover it. Jeez. It would stop cravings rather than alter metabolism. Yeah. See, I'm not a biologist, obviously. But like, to me, it makes sense that we have hormones that basically tell us when we feel like we are full. And when our stomachs feel enough full that like we get the right amount of like, hormones to send to our brain to be like, I am happy. I'm good with what I have inside of me. And that if you like lived in like a culture where you're eating a lot of like low nutrition food, that you would have more of that, and if you live in a place where there's a lot of high nutrition food, you would have less of that, which would affect the amount of food you need to be satiated. And but if you like move to like modern culture where our food is all super dense with calories and is also laced with like all of the nutrients that our brains are wired to seek out and get at all costs, that it's really tough to like actually control that. And hopefully if we can get something like Ozempic or Mounjaro to be like a thing that we give like regularly to people, then that would be great, because it would mean that we are sort of balancing that out, and maybe we can like treat things like obesity as like the medical issues that they are, rather than being this like sort of weird moralizing over it, basically, if that makes sense. it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see what happens when that actually goes through. We'll see what comes out of that. All right, let's see. What are my favorite books on U.S. history, whether it be on specific events or people? Or what are my favorite comprehensive U.S. history books? Geez, what's some really good ones? I'm going to go into my Goodreads. I'm so bad at superlatives. Like, what's your favorite of this? Instantly paralyzing. It would be great also if we could just force companies to not hyper fill their things with salt and fat and sugar. Whether or not we're ever going to be able to do that is a different question altogether, right? Let's see. Stamped from the Beginning is actually a decent book that I read in 2020. That's about that's sort of like a history about race relations in America. That one's pretty solid. Jeez. Nixonland. Nixonland's a really, really good book. That's about the sort of conservative turn in the 1970s and the sort of effect of Richard Nixon on American politics. On like the sort of new right. Gay New York, I think it's called, by George Chauncey, which is about the gay movement in New York City in the 1920s when people didn't. Being gay wasn't legal, but also people didn't care that much about it. And cops were a lot more bribable back then, so there was a lot of gay people who lived in these sort of spaces where the state really didn't pay attention to them, and they were able to thrive. And they were like a solid part of the New York scene. And they had a sort of like renaissance. There was sort of like a gay renaissance built in New York that was really fascinating, and then sort of closed down in the 1930s because the recession or the Great Depression led to like a lot of like the Great Depression led to like a sort of moral backlash against that kind of stuff. Wages of Whiteness is another really good book. Wages of Whiteness is a book about sort of like what. About like it's basically like a book about racial identity focused on white people, and about how kind of like how patriarchy hurts men by like imposing all of these like ideas and like making us like do these things that are not healthy. And what's it called? Whiteness studies is like the sort of seminal thing that the Wages of Whiteness were about, and it is also very fascinating. When to become legal to be gay in America? I feel like it was sort of like a line. Like being gay wasn't illegal, but there were like anti-sodomy laws, which basically were just bans on gay sex. And those started letting up, I think, in the 1960s. They didn't all go. And also sometimes it was like the law still existed, but they just weren't enforced anymore. But maybe like the 1970s, 1980s is when those laws started going through. 2003? What happened in 2003? But in many ways, like the ability for gay people to exist in social spaces in America were more dependent on how much people were willing to enforce the laws that were on the books. So that is more the thing. Like, in the 1920s, people didn't really care about homosexuality. It wasn't really an identity back then. It was a thing you did rather than a thing you were. And so there was like it was just like sort of part of American culture that was sort of like a subculture, and it was a lot more. a lot more loose, and like the law didn't really put a lot of emphasis. And then like in the 30s, that sort of changed. 1973 was when homosexuality was delisted as a mental disorder by the APA. There's that. Lawrence v. Texas? Is that what it was? Oh yeah, that makes sense. The Supreme Court decision, that's as good a time to make it point out as any. Do you think it will become illegal to be trans in most of the country? I certainly hope not. I don't know. I don't know how far this whole anti-trans legal panic is going to go, and like what states it's going to be successful or unsuccessful in. I do sense that there's like, as it gets more prevalent, there's going to be more of a backlash against it, because it's so overtly like offensive to like humanity. Like it's so like bald on the face oppressive to a very specific group of people, that people who are kind of checked out to the entire back and forth are going to get more into it as like it becomes more apparent that this is just like open discrimination and oppression. Do you think it's more or less likely? I mean, it's becoming... I think that there's going to be a definite try, and there's definitely going to be some states where it does go that way, but I don't think it's ever going to get like countrywide. And I don't think it's... I don't imagine it could be countrywide. That would be... I feel like that wouldn't get far enough. But... and I do think that a lot of what's going on right now will have a backlash at some point. Because like if you look at like... The thing is, like, we think too much, like, we follow the day-to-day news too closely. And I think, by looking at, like, the data, like, by and large, people in America don't care about trans issues. They don't think that trans people are a threat to humanity. They don't particularly care about anything about to do with trans people. By and large... gay rights have taken a huge push forward in the last few decades, to the point where a very comfortable majority of Americans are completely fine with gay people. And so a lot of what is being done right now is being done by a disproportionately undemocratically powerful minority. And really we're dealing with like a bunch of people that are either going to suffer some real political comeuppances in the next election, or they're going to keep fucking around, and then at some point they're going to, like, it's just going to be too much for the people who are just sort of not motivated or don't care, and they're eventually going to be like, okay, this is fucked up. I'm not gonna deal with that. So like, I do think that in many ways, I do think that that this current moment there's a high watermark for it, and I don't think that it's as I don't think we're going to have a full Gilead situation, if that makes sense. The Supreme Court wants to genocide, so that kind of scares me. I mean, it's not going to be great. And the Supreme Court does act as a very large impediment to protecting people's rights. In many ways, a lot of what the Supreme Court is going to do is going to force a lot, or is going to result in a lot of individual states being shitty. I do think that's going to happen. I think it's already happened in like places like Florida and in some other places. But I do think that this current action is looking to be very unpopular with like the vast majority of Americans, and it's going to result in some rather disappointing elections for Republicans in 2024. But it doesn't mean that it's not like, it doesn't mean that it's not going to result in a lot of people being functionally abandoned or oppressed by their governments and having no recourse but to try and escape. And that it's not going to result like that, that these laws don't have blood on their hands, that there's not going to be, innocent, good people who won't be with us because of these laws. And that's unforgivable. It's going to be bad. I don't think it's going to be apocalyptic, if that makes sense. It's going to still be very bad. And it's unacceptable how many people are going to be hurt by these laws. How many people are going to be killed by these laws. So there's that. Plus, like, I feel like there are ways to take, like, Supreme Court justices do serve for life, yes, but there's, I sense that this frustration with the Supreme Court is not going to, like, there are ways to fuck with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has been a major douchebag lately, and so, I'd be very curious to see what happens with, like, this new campaign that's kind of going around that shows that, that Justice Clarence Thomas is, like, basically openly being bribed by a bunch of, like, conservative mega donors. And I'd be very curious to see where that winds up. If it means that if Clarence Thomas can be, like, pushed to resign or something like that, that might be a way to mix things up on the Supreme Court. Alrighty. But yeah, to kind of fill out the thing with Zarek Shadow's question, Gay New York by George Chauncey is great. Rogue Nation, An Introduction to the America the Rest of the World Knows, was the book that actually got me into into radical politics and stuff like that. Some other ones. Going to my Goodreads right now. Oh yeah, Gender and the Politics of History. That's a good one. The New Jim Crow. Another really good one. Let me see. Top rated ones. 1491. One of my favorite American history books. People's History of the United States, of course. Let's see. Yeah, I feel like that's a decent amount. Oh, A Brief History of Neoliberalism by David Harvey. That's a good one, too. Okay. Have you seen what the London, Not Your London, tweeted out a couple days ago? No. Jeez. This is about, is this about fucking King Charlie Boy? King Charles, who I guess is having a party this weekend. All right. For writing vampires, that should I set the lore for killing vampires? I was kind of thinking sturdy vampires who must be burned by a hot and consistent flame, but I'm not sure. Oh, for like making a vampire. See, like my thing, I like when it comes to like the sort of rules around vampires. I like if I was going to write vampires, I like the fact that vampires are very powerful, but they have a few very specific quirks to them that that as they get more powerful, they get more of these very specific quirks. Like things like about how vampires need to be invited into the house, or that they can't cross running water, or things like that. And so like sometimes I like the like stake through the heart thing as a way to kill a vampire, because it's like it's part of like their mystique. They're very powerful, but if you know the right way, there is a way to kill them. The World of Darkness strategy? Oh, maybe. I've never played Vampire the Masquerade, so I don't actually know. But I just like that idea because it makes them interesting. Or like, the sunlight thing. That's also cool. Rewatching D Space Nine episodes about the Bell Riots of 2024, it's scary how accurate many of the big picture aspects are. Do you think we might see something that resembling that in the near future? Yeah. The Bell Riots were like about like America building these like concentration camps for homeless people that led to eventually like a riot, and I'm like, yeah, there's been like a horrible crackdown on houseless people, and with more people probably going to become houseless and poor in the next like year or so, then yeah. Vampire VTR forced condition called blood potency, where you eventually had to feed on other vampires. Oh dear. Depending on genre, a more horror-y story, you might rely on the myths and then it doesn't work. Yeah. I never played the first-person RPG Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. I've never played it, no. Mostly when I think about Vampire the Masquerade, I think of the tabletop role-playing game. But I've never played Bloodlines either. Keep in mind, I haven't played a lot of video games. This will sound weird. I haven't seen a lot of movies. I haven't watched a lot of TV shows. And I also haven't played a lot of video games. I mostly just read books. Which is weird. But it also means I'm like always out of touch with what everybody else is into. All right. Why does the UK electoral left hang out with the far right a lot? There's a lot of good communist anarchists in the UK, but the elected self-proclaimed communists like George Galloway and parties like CPGP-ML have gotten into transphobia and worked with people like Caleb Maupin and Alex Jones. I wish I could tell you. I hate that shit. I think that there's just like, the thing is that like there's a socially, like if you think about where people come to leftist politics from, there are times like in the past, like leftists in like the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe not the 70s, maybe not even the 60s, but like there's a certain streak of leftism that came into like socialist politics in the Cold War dynamic, when they were more representing like they more sympathized with the Soviet Union. In a more modern day context, people come to left-wing activism through higher education, through like the educated, through education. While in the past it had more of a root in trade unionism and stuff like that, which means that there's a stream of leftism that's small, but is still rooted in that older, more trade unionist rooted thing, which doesn't have as much of an emphasis on like anti-sexism, anti-racism, anti-homophobia. or anti-transphobia, and more see the goal of and see leftism spreading through appealing to what they see as a sort of working class aesthetic, and that usually involves some bigotry. While people who come to leftism through academic work kind of come through a sort of an educated route of less, with a more emphasis on different types of bigotries and such. It's definitely not a perfect answer, but and obviously there's tons of exceptions in every single situation, but it does at least say something as to why there can be people who call themselves socialists who are also cozying up to people like Caleb Maupin and Alex Jones and doing bullshit like that. Technically, even though I disagree, Caleb Maupin thinks of himself as a socialist. You made a leftist meme. Let's see what this is all about. Marks and angles. Yes, and their angles. Perfect. So yeah, I'm actually out of questions now, interestingly enough. Luckily, a lot of labor leftists are women laborers. Yeah. Right now, the thing is that, this is... What I would say is that the people who are that sort of people who think that old left narrative that we're just talking too much about pronouns to make the working class come on board are wrong, and they have a fundamentally misplaced idea of what the working class looks like today in a lot of Western countries, where in our service economy the working class does tend to be more diverse. It tends to have people of color and women and people with disabilities, because those are the people who get fucked over when it comes to discrimination in pay. And so the working class, the working class is very much not the people they think they are. And there's this false notion that regular working class Joes, the people who got the Trumps elected, when really it was upper middle class, small business tyrants that really got Trump elected. So they're wrong, is the thing. Whew. The UK has had Labour MPMs who started as trade unionists. Imagine a trade unionist as the US president. Man, that'd be great. Unfortunately, yeah, the role of the US president has basically nearly always been the place of wealthy, wealthy rich boys from fancy institutions, basically since it started. I'm thinking in the last century or so, the only president who really came from modest means was LBJ. That's the only guy who I think wasn't a fancy wealthy kid. How's the family? Family's good. Little guy turns 16 months old tomorrow, and he just started walking yesterday, so pretty excited for this weekend. It's going to be the first weekend where he walks around, and we're going to have it's going to be some nice weather, so I'm looking for some wild, fun times. Oh yeah, Nixon came from pretty humble roots, didn't he? Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember this. Yeah, Nixon hated elites, didn't he? That was his whole thing. Jimmy Carter was a fancy wealth kid. Where did he go to school? Man, I'm really going to eat my words on this, aren't I? Early life. I mean, it says something very strong that that Jimmy Carter was the first president to be born in a hospital. Yeah, Carter's dad was a successful local businessman and an investor in farmland. So, by which you meant Jew? No. Richard Nixon hated like yuppies who went to like Princeton and Harvard and stuff like that. And he hated that that those people thought they were better than him. Nixon had a lot of very personal grudges. He didn't like in California politics that everybody like kind of talked down to him because he didn't go to an elite school or something like that. And always like what's it called? Always sort of took that shit personally. But then he ended up going to Duke for law school, so you know how normal is he, right? Like LBJ just went to like regular ass college, if I remember correctly, to be like a teacher or something, right? Like in many ways, I feel like Richard Nixon was just not ideological. Like he was extremely not ideological. He was conservative because like that's just where his tendencies were. But like he didn't like the anti-war protesters because he found them annoying, and he didn't like that they got in the way of what he wanted to do. I think he it's obvious he wasn't a Cold Warrior because he's like most responsible for like cooling down the Cold War. But he and like he didn't like a lot of like he had a lot of like really racist attitudes towards black people, and I think that a lot of it comes from the fact that he thought that the civil rights people were like were messing around with like government goddamn things. Like he was very much like I feel like he wasn't a deep thinker, Not that he was dumb. I mean, he went to law school and I think he knew he was obviously like a very suave politician in a lot of ways, but he was very petty and he was not very like not very deep. Nixon hated the Bohemian Grove parties, but not for any ideological reason. He just thought it was gay and weird and hated having to go. That is a very Nixonian. That's a very Nixon way to think. That basically outlines what I'm trying to say about Nixon. Yeah. Like I remember when he lost some election in California, and his whole thing is like, you guys won't have Richard Nixon to kick around anymore. And I was like, oh my God, this is so fucking petty. My favorite LBJ fact is he pretended to lose control of his amphibious car and crashed into a lake when people visited the White House. Man, LBJ was so shitty on the Vietnam War, but there's so many great stories about him. Like the fact is, LBJ also hated like the yuppie kids from Princeton and Harvard and stuff like that, and he delighted in pissing them off to the point where when LBJ was president, he loved to do shit like he would be like he'd be surrounded by all of his presidential aides. And they would all be like, rich, like the children of rich kids who are rich people who then went to like fancy universities and had like prestigious degrees and were like very ambitious and trying to like, rule, like trying to like rise up. And he would do stuff like start talking to his aides and like walk into the bathroom and just keep talking And so his aides had to follow him while he would like go, like they had to talk, they had to go into the bathroom with him and listen to him while he was just like taking a piss or something. It's just like the most hilarious fucking shit. And he delighted in pissing off those people. God, LBJ had some was terrible in many ways, but he was also based in a lot of very funny ways. Also apparently packed some massive heat. It's like that famous, what's it called? That famous phone call he had a recorded phone call of him having to get his pants retailored because his dong was just so massive that he had to have his pants retailored or something. And I was like, oh God. I can't believe that had to get onto like actual fucking, like, you know, historical record. All right, so we don't have a ton of time left. What should we talk about? Have you seen the movie where Bryan Cranston plays LBJ? No. I thought I saw a movie where... Am I hallucinating? Is there a movie where Robin Williams plays LBJ? Is that a thing? All the way. Let me see this. Oh, man. Bryan Cranston really nails LBJ's look. That's amazing. Oh, wow. Bryan Cranston really nails that look. Holy shit. Robin Williams. LBJ. Robin Williams did play... He played LBJ in something, right? Oh, no. I'm thinking of in The Butler he played Eisenhower. Yeah. Now I remember. Who played LBJ in The Butler then? The Butler was this movie about this black man who was like the butler of the White House for like several administrations and basically saw like the personal side of a whole bunch of presidents. It was okay. It wasn't like my favorite movie ever, but I remember it being okay. Liev Schreiber? Oh, yeah, okay. Now I remember this. Have I ever seen the 3.5-hour Spike Lee movie about Malcolm X? No, I haven't. Top 3 history betrayals? Historic betrayals. The election of Justin Trudeau. It's not a very good one, but that one just pisses me off particularly because Justin Trudeau ran on electoral reform and then immediately abandoned it. And like ran this whole campaign where it's like, oh, you like vote for the Liberals because this will be the last first past the post election. So like just vote for the Liberals this one time so that we can like, you know, do like fix our broken electoral system, and then immediately abandon it. It was like, oh, that was after that election is when I vowed I am never voting for Liberal ever again. Doesn't matter what the context. Doesn't matter if I'm spoiling the vote and handing it to the Democrat or handing it to the Conservative. I am never, ever voting Liberal ever again. There will never be a time and place in... I will die before I vote Liberal ever again. They have ruined it. Like, even strategically. In that movie, they have Cranston acting out all those weird anecdotes about LBJ. It's fucking based as shit. Oh man, I gotta see this movie. Good thing I never voted for it. Well, Pim, you're Dutch. You have like what's it called? You have what's it called? You have what's it called? That popular or proportional representation privilege. That's why like the Dutch always have like 30 fucking people on their ballots. Where I live, you basically always have a choice between like 3, maybe 4 political parties. And typically it's just the liberals, conservatives, and New Democrats. So the best you have to hope for is the New Democrats, who are ostensibly a social democratic party. And that's about the best you can hope for. I saw a great joke about European politics recently, where it's like every single European election now comes down to like your choices are like the Radical People's Communist Soviet, which is a center-right party, and the Happy Hugs Party, which is like the radical leftist party. Alrighty. Well, I feel like we have hit the wall. So I'm going to, we're going to go and raid somebody now. And then I think we're going to call it a stream. I feel like we had I feel like this was a good one. I feel like we had some pretty good energy. So let's, all right, let's find someone to raid, and then we'll do this thing. Oh, I'm not even logged into Twitch. Dear God. There we go. I got to text myself a code so that I can log into my own Twitch account. I love doing this live. Okay, there we go. Let's go to my dashboard. And then, who am I going to raid? Let's see. We're going to raid, Rob Rousseau. Let's do that. Got it. Rob Rousseau. So where is my button for raiding? There it is. Okay. All right, everybody. That is a stream. I'll see you guys next week. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And I will see you next time. Bye.